in Tampa Bay. Evan Closky joins us on the program, and I was just talking about Simeon Rice. You were there yesterday too, Ev, and I thought it was powerful when the guy, a guy that big and a guy that confident, and we know how brash he was in this, and he went on to talk about his butting of the heads with Warren Sapp early in his career, but to see a guy like that move to tears, at the beginning there, I thought I wasn't expecting that. What say you?
No, I mean, Sim's such a confident guy,
Mhm.
and it, I didn't really know what was going on actually when he stepped
Right.
up there, and I was like, is he crying? And I was like, oh man, he is crying. Certainly, I don't think that he's cried very much in his life, but I think anybody who has lost a parent, and I spoke with Sim afterwards and kind of told him that I lost my mother a couple of years ago, and him having that moment and thinking about what it would have meant for his parents to have been there to see this, knowing that it meant so much to his family, and knowing that his last name is going to go up in the Ring of Honor, and some of these moments that you miss out on as life continues without them. For anyone out there who has been through it, you feel that in the deepest part of your soul, what he felt going into that moment, and how it just smacks you in the face and you cannot plan for it. So, he's so honest about it, saying that we kind of shoved all these feelings about, the loss of his father, and not fully going through maybe a little bit of a therapeutic process for him, and
Right.
in understanding where he's at with that. And it just emerged. So the number one thing that I always appreciate about Sim, and I got to know him really well doing the Blitz when we launched the show. We launched it with Simeon. He is so emotionally intelligent, um,
Mhm.
and he really does know how to speak from an emotional side of things, and is well in touch with him. So to kind of understand where he's at personally, to understand what that moment meant for him, what it meant for his family. It was just really, it was really touching, and it's been a long time coming. And I really hope that this is the start of something that can generate some positive momentum into Canton, because I think he's been overlooked for the Hall of Fame for far too long.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, I think we tend to forget too, like these guys are, they're superheroes, right? They're
Hmm.
superheroes, and we forget at the end of the day that they're human beings as well. I remember after we lost our young one, and going up and having a conversation with Shaq Barrett after he lost his daughter, and him and I just kind of shared a moment together at after training camp one day, and you just it's different, man. It's totally different when you just kind of take the football player out of it and just forget. I know a lot of people out there like, oh, they make millions of dollars. They should be able to compartmentalize their feelings. Like, it's so much easier to say that from the outside. Like, they're going to have bad days. They're going to be happy. They're going to be sad. Like, they do have to go out there and execute on Sunday, but outside of that, like, they're still human beings, and they
Yeah.
go through a lot of the same things. I remember years ago watching Anton Strawman at Amalie Arena, and all four of his kids were running around yelling, and he just sit there and he's just like, oh my God. And I go, oh my God, that's the same look my dad had when his four kids were running around. His kids didn't care that he was a millionaire, that he was a hockey
No.
player. Our guy,
Yeah.
Russell Jay, I think the issue with Simeon getting into the Hall of Fame is that the Bucks 2002 defense would have more Hall of Famers than the 85 Bears defense. And that would solidify our defense as the best ever. I thought in the past that was like a silly argument, but talking to some Hall of Fame voters, that does have something to do with it. I think Simeon should get in. I don't think it makes the Buccaneers defense the best of all time. Sometimes you just have like a amalgamation of stars, and it's like everybody plays at the right time. I think Simeon will eventually get in. I don't know if this is going to be, maybe it'll be one of those like veterans committee kind of things. I hope it doesn't wait that long, but like you said, man, he definitely deserves to get in.
Yeah, it's going to take some time, especially because I think for the first time this past year, he finally cracked the top 50.
Right.
So it was taking a while for him to even get that far. So we really can't even start thinking about the possibilities of Simeon getting in until he can start becoming a finalist, and kind of go through what, Rondé had to go through, where you sit around and you don't get that knock for a couple of years. But, or, Rondé's case one, Lynch had, all these guys have to usually go through the old, I'm not getting the knock this year sort of deal. So once he kind of gets into that rotation, it's coming close. But yeah, I mean, between the Bears, between the Steel Curtain, the Bucks defense that year, that Super Bowl winning defense certainly is up there within the pantheon of best ever. Whether they are, we can all debate where they
Yeah.
rank with the 85 Bears and all that stuff, but I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world to admit that when you look at the 2002 Buccaneers defense and you see what they did and they accomplished and they finished the drill, man, I mean, and they really like, I wish they had a little bit more to show for the
Hmm.
talent that they had, and how long they were together. But otherwise, hopefully this is just, Simeon's just kind of been there, and I think now the organization is starting to try to say, okay, we're going to help you out now, right? we're
Right.
gonna we're gonna fully start doing this a little bit more than we ever have, especially because now Rondé, John, all these guys have kind of fell off the docket. They've gotten in. So now the Bucks really don't have anyone to focus in on getting into the Hall of Fame until we start trickling into like,
Yeah.
Mike Evans territory and stuff. So
Right. Well, hopefully that's many, many years down the road because he can play
exactly,
a couple
yeah.
more years here. I know after one Buck yesterday, he went over to Steinbrenner Field to watch what was going on with the Rays. What was the biggest thing? Let's just go pregame before with some of the announcements, some of the players coming back, and
hmm
what was the one player, or one announcement or lack of announcement that really stood out to you?
Well, first off, Jake Mangum's looks like he's going to head for his rehab assignment on Thursday. I think they're missing him.
Hmm.
Um, Certainly a guy that smacks the ball all over the yard, kind of Chandler Simpson-esque, not as fast, but he was certainly effective. And not only that, he's an amazing fielder. So when you talk about some of the most valuable Rays on this team, when you look at, just WAR, and I go by Baseball Reference because typically that is pretty similar to how the Rays view their guys and what they're
Hmm.
analyzing. Jake Mangum was kind of near the top of what he could do. So he's a special guy. He's a spark plug. I really think they're missing a little bit of that. But it's a little bit disheartening that um, Kevin Cash was asked about DeLuca, and he was like, I don't know, he tried to do something the other day, and he's still sore. Like Kevin, pretty much without saying it, it felt like him just being like, I don't know what to tell you. Like I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
confused too. It just does like it's becoming a really bad situation where I don't know when DeLuca is coming back, and that's a big problem because just forget about like the team this year. We needed to see DeLuca this year to understand, is this a guy who the Rays can build with in the future, or is it do we just have to dump our losses and move
Right.
on? And they're getting no information this year, which is the worst possible outcome for a team that's trying to fact find right now to figure out what their foundation's going to be heading into probably like 2027, 2028, when this team should be peaking towards their best talent. So that was a little bit disheartening. Otherwise, it does seem like, generally speaking, they are going to get some bodies back maybe by my next week. Next week, the week after, they're going to get a bunch of dudes. And of course, Shane McClanahan still seems like, the earliest would be the All-Star break. And, with how this season is going, they'll take their sweet time on Shane. They won't push him.
What did you make of the game yesterday? I mean, to fall behind, I mean, some hard luck hits for Pepio. I mean, missed by just a couple inches, and they're able to bounce back, but unfortunately, they come up short at the end of the game. What was your big takeaway from the matchup against the Astros in the first game of that series?
You got to come away with, you got to do your job when it is needed.
Mhm.
Like it's a little bit like the John Cooper quotes about goaltending, right? It's not how many saves you make, it's when you make them. So
Right.
I don't really care about how many hits you have, or you guys have been putrid for 6 innings, whatever, and all of a sudden the seventh you start getting going. I don't care. At the end of the day, do you win or you lose? And in the eighth, in the ninth, or in the seventh and the ninth, they had opportunities there to move runners over, and they to get them into a situation to tie the game or take the lead, and they just failed. I mean, look, Taylor Walls, man, you got to get that bunt down. It was not it was not an easy pitch to bunt. I totally get that, but the fact is, in that situation, you got to do whatever you got to do to get that bunt down. That is
Right.
your job, and I don't blame Kevin Cash for making him bunt because he allowed Walls to hit the previous at bat with first and second. I think it was no out, and he completely whiffed, looked terrible.
Mhm.
So, that it's tough because Walls provides so much defensively, and I wish I can explain to fans how weird it is that Taylor Walls continues to come up with runners in scoring position. I think he's top 3 or 4 on the team in those situations, and he's batting like 8 or 9 in the order. Like, it's not supposed to
Yeah.
happen this way. It's a complete outlier. Like, the guys ahead of him are Yandy, Brandon Lau,
Mhm.
like Junior Caminero. Like, that makes a lot of sense, right? That's what's supposed to happen. But then it's just like Walls just continually gets in this position, and it's just brutal. It's brutal for the team. It's why they got Kim. It just stinks that Kim was never going to be ready in time for the first couple of months, and it's really hurting them because it's a black hole in the lineup. And then the Pepio, I do tip my cap to Pepio for making that a quality start, because I thought that was probably some of his worst stuff this year, location wise. Just even what he was kind of throwing there, it was not his best. Spin was off. Just all these metrics, it didn't look good, and he still found a way to get a quality start. That's the kind of stuff I need to see from Shane Baz, right? You
Yeah.
don't have it, or you're losing it a little bit. Get me back on track. Get me 6 innings, three
Mhm.
runs. And he gave his team a chance to get back in the game, and they did. And then the short porch giveth and it taketh away, and
Right.
and so goes life. But yeah, just I think after the game, there was a comment of like, oh, is this like a little bit of tough luck, so on and so forth. And Cash was right. Like, at some point, we got to make something happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
we can talk about bad luck all we want, but we got to have control of that situation too, and put ourselves in good positions. And I think this team is not far off, but the big moments, the big hits, like, they have some spurts of it. They fight, but not it's not enough of execution in big moments. I think more, um, when we look at the season as a whole, there's been more lack of execution than execution in big spots. And not to say they haven't done it before, but just if they
Mhm.
did a little bit more, they would be above 500.
Yeah, not enough. And the whole Walls thing, you're in an 0-1 count. He squares around a little late because the infield's playing in. And listen, everybody's talking about the decision to bunt or his ability to get the bunt down or lack of ability. He didn't have to bunt. He didn't have to bunt that ball. Like, the ball was above the zone. And if he gets down and he bends his knees properly, I thought it was a very feeble and very frail attempt at getting the
Mhm.
bunt down. And I don't think that enough people are talking about that. It's one thing to bunt, it's
That's
one thing
fair.
not to get a bunt, but he didn't get low enough. Like, usually when they teach you to bunt, it's really bend your knees, get low, because you don't want to bunt. So when you get low and the ball is right up in your eye level there, if it's that high, it's going to be a ball. You don't bunt. So a
Mhm.
ball that you're getting down, it's not chest high anymore. You're bending your knees and it's eye level. You know it's above the zone. You're not going to try to bunt that ball, so you don't pop it in the air like you did last night. I mean, God, he almost hit the ball to the outfield. He bunted that ball so
Yeah.
damn hard. So get down. It was just a lazy, and that's my thing, Evan, is like, there's a lot of people when it comes to this race. There's a lot of everything's a caveat. Everything's like, well, they've done this and they do this, and this guy comes back. Like, successful teams aren't built around ifs and buts and coulds and woulds and shoulds and like, people have injuries. Like, it's just the way it goes. I mean,
Yep.
what's the excuse for Junior Caminero batting in the 230s and 240s? What's the excuse for Yandy Diaz for batting in the 240s? Like, there's just a lot of, and then the pitchers you mentioned, Shane Baz and Taj Bradley, and the ERAs that are over 4 and over 5, and a guy like Ryan Pepio. People keep saying pitching is the strength of this team. I mean, they're not in the top 10 in the majority of things. So how is that a strength if you're middle of the pack? I just feel like there's so many excuses for this team this year. And it's almost like there's people already like writing them off. And I'm like, God dang, it's like 50 games into the season. But I mean, after what we've seen so far, are we really convinced that they're going to turn it around? Like, we're banking on Jake Mangum to come back and to save this team. This wasn't a guy that we even talked about going into the season. So, God bless guys like Chandler Simpson and guys that have been able to keep it afloat. But even the names that we know, Ev, they're not doing the job.
Yeah, and at least my preseason stance on this team, by the way, was possible wild card team, right? Like, I think that they could have snuck into the third wild card spot if things broke right for them. Certainly not a World Series contender. I always viewed this season as a fact finding mission. That's what I'm saying. Like, they
Mhm.
got to figure out they have too much. My biggest knock on the Rays is that they have log jammed themselves into so many positions, and it's not because of like, oh, circumstance. They've done it to themselves. People
Right.
are complaining right now about the Paredes trade, and it's a nuanced topic, and I could spend 20 minutes on that. But the fact is, they had to trade Paredes to bring Caminero up. And Caminero, is most likely going to be a first baseman in the future. Well, Aranda looks like he's a steady force, but he can't play in the field. And you got Trey Morgan down there who looks like he's a Gold Glove first baseman. And they keep drafting these middle infield type of guys that they're trying to put into the outfield. And you're looking at Chandler Simpson, who's still trying to learn the outfield because they moved him out there. It just they're just drafting, and they're bringing in too many people of the same profile. And what happens is when they all start doing things, you get log jammed. And they've made some really bad decisions. They've also made some good ones, but they've made some bad decisions because their hand has been forced of like, well, damn, we're log jammed, and what are we going to do? And that's why they had to part with an Isaac Paredes, because they had to create room. And that trade happened probably a year or two too soon than what they wanted to, because they felt like they had to create space. And in doing so, there's not enough continuity and all this stuff. So, my thing is with the rotation, everyone is still outside of probably Rasmussen, who looks like the best pitcher by far, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Everyone's very young, or outside of Littell too. Everyone's very young, so everyone's still learning, right? Everyone's still learning how to be a pro. We've seen now Taj for a couple of years, but we still forget how young he is. And at a certain point, those excuses are going to run out, but you do have to give them the length of like a full season of getting through it. Where Taj, I do have a little bit higher of an expectation versus a guy like Boz, who has to get through a full year first, and Pepio, who kind of went through it a little bit last year and is gonna have to go through it again. So they're still very young. They got a bunch of arms underneath them who, they can trade some assets and figure some stuff out. But ultimately, I entering the season, I thought it was. I think when we look back on it, it was a really tall order to say, "Hey, Junior Caminero, you're going to have to be the offensive generator for this team when you're 21 and have probably what was it, like 56 games under your belt, or
But that's what they did. That's what they did, and that's the
yeah,
thing. Ev, is like, and I said this about Julian Breezeball, and with the Lightning, is like, you could have a good coach, you can have a good general manager, you can have a good track record, but like, they're fair. It's fair game to critique them when they don't do well, right? Like, to act like
yeah,
Julian
for
Breezeball
sure.
didn't make a mistake with the Tanner Jeannot thing and with the Connor Sheary thing and the Atkinson thing. Like, it doesn't mean that he did do a good job in other areas, or that we think that they should get rid of him, or it takes away any of the successes that he have. But this is a "what have you done for me lately" type. Like, nobody is a general manager or a coach for a team forever, right? So at what point do we look at some of these hitters that aren't hitting and go, well, all right, what are the hitting? What is Chad Mantola doing? All right, what about some of this lineup construction? What about going to guys certain too early, where everybody says, well, hey, it's led them to success in the past. Well, Ev, we're getting farther and farther away from 2020. We're getting farther and
Mhm.
farther away from 13-0. Like, and some of the decisions by Erik Neander, like, it's not like if you critique them, you think they do a terrible job or you should get rid of them. But these guys need to be held to a higher standard too.
I
Because
agree.
once again, like, you're allowed, and I know what the payroll is, but they've been successful in the past. And there's teams with less payrolls, like a team like the Athletics, that they're playing better baseball. Their records are similar, but they're just playing a better brand of baseball than the Rays, right? And that's the crazy thing. We're talking about the A's that are playing also a team without a home, right? So
Now,
I think those guys need to look in the mirror. And I know there's, what's different with them, but I think that the Rays, the leadership here, and I'm not talking about Stu. That's another conversation. I want to ask about that in a second. But I think Neander and Cash need to look at themselves in the mirror, right? We talk about the pitchers. Does Kyle Snyder need to look in the mirror? Like, I think everybody needs to look at themselves in the mirror instead of thinking like, hey, and giving all these reasons and excuses and caveats why things aren't happening. Like, sometimes guys just need to play better. Sometimes
let,
coaches need to coach better too.
let me my I'll say this. First off, right? I mean, anybody who thinks just carte blanche that these guys don't make mistakes is ridiculous. Like, I
Right.
mean, there was the game last week that Cash completely bungled by not bringing in Mason Montgomery for
Right.
Uceta against like Varsho, which was like the worst matchup for him. And I went on Twitter. I was like, what the was that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you doing? And then it was
Right.
completely validated when he rectified that wrong, brought in Montgomery versus Varsho and made him look silly. So, I mean, Cash has been trying to push certain buttons this year. I feel like more feel than like analytics, and it hasn't necessarily connected as well as it should have. Neander. Look, we look at the Morel trade right now, an objective disaster. Not so much that I don't think Isaac Paredes would have done well at Steinbrenner, mind you, but certainly Morel was here for power, and he's done everything but hit home runs.
Right.
I also look at Junior Caminero. I don't love his swing. He has immense power. He really, if he just touches the ball with lift, it's going to go out of the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And he's hitting a million ground balls, and that's kind of what he's done throughout the minors, but it's been exacerbated here.
Right.
And they've tinkered with his swing. It doesn't look great. And I don't know if he's dealing with some sort of injury. He doesn't look 100% healthy,
Mm-hmm.
but that's another debate. At some point, I can make excuses for Matola all I want, and I can explain to you what they see in him, why they want to ride with him. But considering where the offense is, and I understand the talent, pretty much since 2022, if we ignore the most outlier 2 months that this franchise will ever see at the start of 2023, where
Right.
they could have hit anything and everything, it hasn't been pretty. And at some point, this organization, I think my number one complaint about them is they are far too patient. They are far too complacent with people who do not perform
Right.
that do now this year they're kind of stuck with hitters, right? Everyone wants like need to get sent down. I think Meisner is well overmatched now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meisner had an amazing start. He in his last like 58 at bats, he struck out more than 50% of the time. It's ugly.
Right.
Ugly. He's overmatched. But all they have is Coco Montez on the 40 man, and that's it.
Mind.
Everyone else is injured. So they're kind of stuck there. So I understand you can't really keep tinkering and bringing people in. But certainly with pitchers, they have Joe Boyle there waiting in AAA. His numbers are fantastic. His stuff plus is amazing. He is one of the 5 best pitchers in this organization, and he is still in Durham. You are wasting innings on him. If you want to send a shot across the bow, I don't even care. You don't even have to send someone down. Just say, we're going to bring up Boyle for a start. And if he performs well, he's going to get another start. And
Right.
that's how you push people left and right. You can't just say, hey, we're going to get mediocre results and live with the process, because I get process over results and all that stuff. Firm believer in it. But at some point, you got to send a shot across the bow to your players that if you do not perform, there are repercussions for not
Right.
performing. And this organization, time and time again, sends people out there and they just let you just have bad results until it can't be. Last year, I don't know how long we had to see Chris Davinsky suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we said that enough is enough with this. I don't
Right.
know how long we have to realize that Ben Rortvedt is not a legitimate backup catcher, or how long we had to learn that Alex Jackson was not a backup
Right.
catcher.
Mm-hmm.
The guy is hitting 093. Like, it is unacceptable to have that in your major leagues. And I can explain to you why he is on the team still, because they have 2 catchers underneath him who are injured in the minors. But at some point, you got to just say F it, and we
Yeah.
got to hold our team accountable, and we can't
Mm-hmm.
say that 93 is good enough. So there's a fine line. And I think fans probably aren't patient enough in general. But there is a point where I think the Rays go the other way and are far too patient, far too lenient, and it does not create a sense of urgency. It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. And it's just, I understand process over, outcome, but if your process is not leading to a positive outcome, then your process needs to change, right? That something's got to give, right? It's a results oriented business. And again, it was the same thing with Randy Rosarena a couple of years ago when I was saying, hey, it's not 2020 anymore. Like, we're still living on the heyday of Randy's postseason. That was the aberration. That's the exception. So at what point do you start looking at some of these players and like, it's not okay? Like, I don't understand. I have no explanation whatsoever why the Rays completely just give up on guys' offense just for the sake of defense. Like, you're allowed to get a guy that can play just slightly less defense that can hit 210. Like I don't understand why it's all or nothing. It makes no sense to me.
The thing is, the funny part about that is this offseason, they actually said, screw it. We are going to sacrifice defense for a little bit of offense. And they ended up becoming the best defense per defensive run saved. They are right now the best defensive team in Major League Baseball, which is pretty funny that they did all that. But you see it though with Junior Caminero, right? Like they traded Paredes, an excellent third baseman, for someone who is one of the worst third basemen out there in Junior Caminero because he can hit home runs, which he does. And over time, Junior should be a better hitter than what he's showing. He's not the first 21-year-old to go through some
Right.
training wheels here in the major leagues, but they've done some of that. The problem, and they have Hassan Kim waiting to take over for Taylor Walls, even though Taylor Walls, I have to give him credit, arguably is the best fielder in Major League Baseball this season. Not position, like not shortstop, best fielder. So again, per defensive run saved. So there's a little element of that where they kind of gave into some of the defensive metrics for a little bit more offense, but it still isn't good enough. And that's where we do have to factor in DeLuca out, Palacios out.
But
Josh
even
Lowe missed a
those
ton
guys,
of time.
but those guys aren't proven, right? Like that's the thing is,
No, they're not
like
proven, but
we don't know who DeLuca
they are
is.
better than what
Palacios
their
is
replacements would be.
Are they? We don't know that. Palacios is a fourth outfielder. DeLuca's a guy you just said to yourself. We don't know how good DeLuca is. Josh Lowe.
Theoretically, I'm speaking.
Theoretically, that's what you get. That gets you playing golf. That gets you playing golf in October.
I certainly get that. But the point of what I'm saying is they entered the season thinking one thing and now it changed to another. So, we can all debate whether that's a good decision and the roster construction entering the season was bad. We knew the offense was going to be bad entering the season. We all said, what did you do with this offense? But the point is, when you look at how they view it and what they think it's going to look like, I mean, even Neander came out before the season and said this is going to be an average offense, right? And if everything goes our way, above average. I mean, like when a GM is going out there saying, "Yeah, we think we're going to be an average offense," that's never a good thing.
I hate that.
It's never a good thing. And yeah, that's where you can trickle into Stu and sort of the investment in the team and just, I mean, legitimately they're not helping their cause out. I mean, they're out there and we know they have a problem. They didn't fully address the problem. And guess what? It's still a problem. No shocker.
I just don't know why that I understand you can't go out and buy bats, but not every bat that is good in the major leagues were bats that people bought in free agency or acquired via the trade. Like there are bats that come through the system. Like the Mets drafted Pete Alonso, the Yankees drafted Aaron Judge, right? Like there's a lot of these guys in baseball where they drafted, and there's nobody. I just don't understand how the Rays don't even stumble upon a guy. They don't even get a guy that's like out of nowhere, like, wow, this guy's a much better hitter. Look at that. Like the Yandy Diaz thing came in a trade, and now he's gotten precipitously worse. So
I would argue Junior Caminero in that trade was kind of a fleece job.
Exactly. But again, how many,
Myers, yeah.
Where's the guy? Where's the one guy that you're like, wow, they were able to get this guy. They were able to develop him. You're looking at Cam Smith last night out of Florida State. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just looking at guys like that, and I'm just like, how come the Rays haven't drafted a D1 guy that could smoke the baseball and that comes in here and bats 270? I'm not even asking a guy that's batting 300, Ev. I'm giving a guy that bats 275. Give me a guy. Like, how come every single guy that they bring up has got to be a bottom of the barrel guy? How come every guy is a Vidal Brujan, a Richie Schaefer, all these guys that you eventually get rid of because they can't hit? Like at the end of the day, we give so much credence to the development of the pitchers and the defense. How come there's not an onus on developing offense? It's wild to me.
It's crazy. I mean, I think that, look, their foundation, I mean, what they've done outside of the Xavier Isaac draft, which was that's the only time that I can remember recently that they drafted somebody who they were like, oh, we're going to just go for power and not worry about all the other things, right? Typically, I mean, they did draft Braden Taylor last year, who was a college bat, was more advanced, and is having a really atrocious minor league season this year. But for the most part, they draft all these tweener, second baseman, shortstop types, and who have great glove, great speed, and you can move them around. I mean, I think in their head, they want to build a team of just guys who can make contact with the baseball, not drive it out of the park and steal a million bases. Like I think in their dream scenario outside of the catcher position and the, probably first base, third base, everybody else will be these kind of like 35 stolen base guys who, will just hit for a 250 north average. And if they can get on base, you just start the merry-go-round. Because why? Those guys are cheaper because you're never going to pay
Right.
the big boppers. And so it's a really screwed up way of kind of viewing these things, of where you got to factor in the money and what you're going to pay for. And it's why, pitching is the easiest commodity to find on the open market out there, because you can, tinker with one or two things and boom, they're an all-star caliber and stuff plus. But they do have to. My bigger concern is like they have a really deep farm system right now, probably going back to pre, the Randy days and all that stuff,
Mhm.
where they hit that 4-year gap where they had to really figure themselves out again. We're kind of there, and they got a lot of talent in the farm system, but this year has been very underwhelming, and it's been disheartening to watch some of these guys in minor leagues. And more importantly, Carson Williams, who I was super excited to say, hey, next year, shortstop is figured out for the next, I don't know how long, because this is a gold glove caliber guy who is going to hit like 20 to 25 home runs and be, and steal like 30 bases. They're finally going to have their shortstop back. And he moved up to AAA and has been so overwhelmed to the
Mhm.
point where it is like embarrassing. So Braden Taylor was the next best prospect. He's been so overwhelmed. I think he's in AA. It's been bad, and a lot of their top guys just have not shown up outside of maybe like Braylor Guerrero. And guess what? He's in Charleston right now. So it's like there's a little bit of like what is going on here, because like organizationally, it outside of a few guys we can pinpoint, it's been a bad year, like all the way down. It just their top guys have not been performing, and I haven't been seeing too many guys where I'm like, oh, this guy's doing really well.
Right.
Pitching wise, a little bit better than the hitting, but the hitting is just
And shout out to Sean Thomas and Cam Smith, not drafted by the Astros. That's right. He came across in the Kyle Tucker deal. Um, I want to answer one of the things that you said. I forgot who told me this years ago. So there's this belief in Major League Baseball that if you draft a bunch of guys up the middle, that you can move them to different spots, because you draft these guys in a certain position, they move somewhere else. And it's always easier to move guys out rather than move guys in. You're not going to draft a first baseman and make him a shortstop. It's a lot easier to draft 8 shortstops, because then one of them could be your second baseman, one of them could be your third baseman, one of them could be your center fielder, which is great. But every once in a while, you need a big old, hog molly at first base that's 6'5", 265, that can eat 5 pizzas and drop 50 bombs for you. Like Prince Fielder was never going to be a shortstop, right? You need, like, that's what the great thing about baseball is. And I know that the Rays have tried to construct their roster so that they have everybody that's versatile. I understand that. But when you focus so much on versatility and guys play multiple positions, I think you hurt yourself, because there is a familiarity with baseball, right? You want guys to feel comfortable, and you find that out about anybody. We asked John Cooper about this about Nick Paul. He's like, Nick Paul, he would probably want to play in the same position. He would probably want to be third line center all year long. And like, professional athletes want to know what their routine is, especially baseball. It's more routine oriented than any of the other sports.
Yep.
And as much as we laud the Rays for the ability to be versatile and guys knowing that they may play, they may not play, I understand that. But the best teams in baseball, for the most part, their lineup's pretty standard. You kind of know what it is, and there's 2 or 3 spots maybe that'll change if you have a lefty, if you have a day off, but you're not tinkering the whole lineup, and you're not overriding everything and taking your best bats out based on just something that you're reading in analytics. Like, there's times where I don't care if there's a left-handed pitcher on the mound. Jonathan Aranda needs to be in the lineup. If you have guys that are batting 0.95, I don't care what his average is against lefties. He's batting 310 overall. He's got to be in the lineup. Like, they got to find a way. And you said it before, like, going with your gut a little bit more. But the Rays, and I think it's not even just with the big club, I think it's organizationally, because there's something to be said about these guys that are highly touted, that are drafted, and then they don't perform in the minor leagues, and then they come up here and they don't perform in the big leagues. Like, there's an organizational, I think, miss when it comes to hitting that needs to be overhauled, because the fact that they don't even stumble on a hitter is a huge Huge problem.
And
Before I let you go ahead,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say very quickly, it's been about 7 years with this core group of coaches. Once Matola took over,
Yeah,
like at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, do we need to bring in some fresh ideas?
yeah,
Are we when you start hanging around the same people all the time and drinking the same drinks, you got to wonder what else is out there. And I really do think organizationally, they got to ask themselves, have we brought in enough outside help to really keep us fresh and around the above the curve? Because the Rays used to thrive in the small margins, and more than ever before, other teams have spent in their analytical department.
yeah,
They are right there with the Rays on some of these things. So the margins that they had over other teams slightly gone. So I do agree with you on a lot of what you said. Of just at some point you got to ask yourself, is what we're doing the best thing for our organization, or do we need a jolt somewhere and to try something else?
yeah. Whether that's how you construct a roster, whether that's how you're teaching hitting from a minor league level, like nobody has
Yeah.
ever exceeded expectations offensively, which is
No.
scary. Before I let you go, my last question. Do you think what has happened off the field, do you think what happened in the offseason has any effect on what is going on with the team this year?
Um, I, I will say playing at Steinbrenner does not help. And
Mhm.
and I'm not like, I don't want to make an excuse. And Cash, he got asked it again, and he was like, he's frustrated by.
He's sick
He's
of talking
frustrated.
about it.
He is, and he's sick of talking about it because he doesn't have a good answer, right? So you're asking a question that he can't properly answer, and he understands the issue, and he's trying to fix the issue. But he said this is not home. This is a temp home, right? And I think we all forget that, right? We keep saying they're home, they're home, they're home. And Kevin is just like, hey guys, just reminder, this is not where we live, right? We're
Mhm.
borrowing this place and we appreciate it. And the facilities are great. And there's no excuse to not win on game day. But this is not our home. And this team is not built for Steinbrenner Field. They are not built for power. The Yankees have built a lineup for power that can exploit the short porch and do these things that Yankee Stadium is built for, right? They spent years and years cultivating lineups to make sure that it works for their ballpark. Teams tinker with their outfields to make sure that it makes sense with their roster of what they have. It's why Baltimore brought in their left field. Oh crap, our hitters are complaining. But
Mhm.
this ballpark sucks for them. It is brutal for Morel. It is brutal for Danny Jansen. It is brutal for some of these guys where their home runs would be more if they were in Tropicana Field than what it is at Steinbrenner. The wind has been brutal to play in. And when you face teams who have more power than you do, it is not as big of an issue for them as it is for you.
Right.
So that's just the nature of it. So that, yes, that is 100% a factor. Do I think like them actually playing there and like the going across the bridge and all this stuff, I don't think that has anything to do with it. But yeah, I think this was a kind of an off season of turmoil, a lot of questions, everyone's trying to figure it out on the fly. They're home for long stretches. The schedule is crazy and it's only going to get crazier. So in the end, I think when we look back on it, we're going to say this was just a batshit crazy season. Like, to be completely honest on that front.
Well,
So
what was everybody saying before? That's my whole thing. It's like
yeah.
now everybody's like, all right, well, we didn't have a roster. Like all everybody kept saying going into this. That's it. The narrative changes more with the Rays than any of the teams in
Well,
town.
it's two
Going
it's
into
two
this,
things though. It's two things. I just want to say, like,
no, go
there are
ahead.
roster issues too. Because just because I say all that stuff, right? Like, so the question was like, has this affected them? It has. Does that mean that it's going to explain away all their issues and that I am going to say, hey, next year just run it back with the same group? They didn't have a fair shake? No, right?
Right,
Because the fact is, I watched Morel for half a season last year. He didn't hit any home runs in Tropicana Field. He had,
right.
he had two great games against the Marlins, and that was it. And that's my biggest thing. You bring up Matola. If you're Erik Neander, I'm sorry, but for Neander, it looks like egg on your face, Eric, when the Morel deal blows up in your face. And if you don't
Mhm.
have a hitting instructor who can get Morel fixed, if you don't have a hitting instructor that can make Junior Caminero the best possible hitter, that's a problem, because that is your future, and that's going to make you look bad, right? So that is, look, I like Chad, but the fact is, it is a performance based thing. So there's two things here. right? We can say objectively the ballpark is not built for the Rays. It has
Right.
not helped them, but also it is not to explain away the issues they have and the continual issues they will have moving forward, because there are problems there. And this is what happens when you have a rotation that doesn't bail out a crappy offense. That's what
Hmm.
we're seeing. We're seeing a mediocre starting pitching group based on stats, actually a below average pitching group based on stats, not bail out their bad hitters, which is the way that this lineup is supposed to be built. And I kind of expected that with with Steinbrenner being a little bit of a hitter friendly ballpark to what we thought it was going to be. But I just think they're going to have to do some sort of uh, you know at some point they're going to have to really internally focus in on themselves and say, are we doing things correctly? And I don't imagine at the end of the year we're going to get to a conclusion and say, well, if only they were in Tropicana Field, this season would have been an 87 win year. That's just not the case. So two things are true.
Yeah, because when you look at the stadium and say, "Oh, well, it's a hitter-friendly ballpark," well, shouldn't that benefit the Rays hitters then, right? Like, I mean, you
Yeah.
have a guy like Yandy Diaz that hits the ball the other way, and he's not hitting home run after home run to right field. Junior Caminero hit that beautiful home run at Chavez Ravine against the Dodgers last year to right field. He's got power out that way. I mean, Evan Longoria and BJ Upton, they smoked the ball when they were at Yankee Stadium. So going into the season, and this is kind of my point, is like going into the season, a lot of people were saying if there's a team that is built to deal with these extraneous circumstances, it would be the Rays. They know how to deal. I don't know if the ball, like, I know it makes a difference, but I don't, like as we just said, I don't know if the Rays are going to be that much better at Tropicana Field. Like, these
The
guys weren't, Ben Rortvedt wasn't tearing the cover off the ball last year. And
no, no.
if he's batting 93 at a ballpark that is conducive to left-handed batters, like, think about that. And then I think you look at this season, and if not only does it not help because I think it's going to be tougher to have people go to the games when it gets hot out, when there's rain, if they're
Well,
not playing well, but also you're going to go through this entire season. Let's say they're 70 and 92 or whatever. And then what? You just say, oh, we just threw the season away for nothing. Like, that doesn't help you. So, like, I just felt like this was a season that was either you were going to show that this Rays team was going to be resilient and be able to win games in a multitude of ways, pitching, defense, hitting, or this was going to be almost an unmitigated disaster because all you're doing now is you're not performing and you have that underlying reason, excuse, whatever you want to call it. Well, we were playing somewhere else, all these different things. Like, it's almost a throwaway season because, as you said, where's the fact finding? If these guys are hurt and they're not playing well, you still have kind of that built-in reason. Well, maybe it'll be different at Tropicana Field. I
the,
don't know where we go with the Rays this year.
and the next time I do see Eric, I got to ask him this question, because going into Steinbrenner Field, um, the short porch was out there. So
Mm-hmm.
you probably want your hitters to look oppo power, right? To kind of lift the ball the opposite way, which is the antithesis of what the Rays teach. They want you pull power. Pull
Mm-hmm.
power in Steinbrenner is horrendous.
Right.
But I wonder if there's a philosophical focus on, like, we don't want to tinker with people for a year and completely F them up to work to this ballpark. We're just going to accept our L here and keep them doing the right thing, because like Junior Caminero and Yandy Diaz, I think combined they have one home run away from Steinbrenner. Their profiles work well in that ballpark,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they hit it opposite field, it goes out because that's the way that it's built. So if they were working all offseason on going the opposite field with power, like, Junior has to understand he doesn't have to pull things. Like, he
Right.
needs to really adopt more of what Yandy does. Like, just be patient, let it go the other way, and it's going to fly off your back because you're so damn powerful. And like, it just doesn't seem like he's doing that. He's like trying to pull with power, and that's why you're getting all these grounders into the dirt, because he's getting on top of the baseball instead of letting
Mm-hmm.
it get a little bit deeper and just taking it the other way and understanding it's going to fly. So to me, I'm a nobody on the outside looking at that, right? I don't understand how that's not more of a focus. And then I look at Christopher Morel, and we completely dumbed down the game for him, and we said,
Mm-hmm.
hey, just swing as hard as you can at as many pitches as you can, because when you hit it, you barrel it and it goes a long way. But teams are just throwing him sliders and off-speed
Mhm.
stuff on the lower outside, which he's done his entire career. That the book is well out of Morel. And at no point does anyone say, "Hey, let me just try to hit that pitch a little bit to get people off of it, and then I can go and barrel up some of these other ones." But nobody wants to tinker with that. Everyone wants to just play within these margins of like, "Hey, pitchers are going to make mistakes. You just hit the mistakes." Like
Right.
that's just. I think that's a very tough way to play the game of baseball. And I don't know. I mean, I think we're kind of a little bit more old school
Yeah.
in the thinking, and I understand the new school and I respect the new school. But like when I went up to the dish, I looked at sometimes alignment. I looked at how the
Mhm.
pitcher was throwing me, and I just
Right.
went the way that the ball was going. I didn't think of a
Exactly.
million things. I got my ass on base. That was my goal. How do I get on base? And look, I wasn't a guy that hit like 30 home run. Like I had zero power to me, so I was a Jake Mangum type. But at the same point, like we do have to just allow hitters to sometimes go up there and say, just hit the flipping ball. And I think that's
Mhm.
why we've seen Josh Lowe look better this year, because to me, he looks like a guy who stopped trying to drive everything with power to his pull side. And he looks like he's spraying the ball a little bit more, seeing it better, tinkered with his bat. And I've loved what I've seen with Josh Lowe at the end of spring training and what we've seen right now since he's been back.
I mean, look at a guy like Chandler Simpson, right? You're not going to really teach kids to swing and hit the way he does, but he just hits the ball where it's pitched and he
Isn't it,
accentuates your
isn't
strengths.
it Isn't it funny that I think for Rays fans, if you were to ask them who some of their players are, like I bet you Chandler Simpson and Jake Mangum are on the top, near the top of that list.
Mhm.
And those guys are slap hitters who get on base, steal bases. Simple game, right?
Right.
Fun baseball. People love watching that, right? That
Yeah,
we
of
don't like.
course.
We kind of forget in all this stuff that the three true outcomes is boring ass baseball, and
Yeah.
that people just like to see people playing the damn game, getting on base, making the defense work. It's why I always said it when Chandler was in the minors. He's going to be a fan favorite immediately because he plays such a great game. It's so much fun to watch. It's fun watching Mangum. It's fun watching these guys with their hair on fire. That like at some point you got to bring the passion that like everyone grows up
Mhm.
with, and the way that you're taught, and you got to stop trying to dumb down the game to be like, just do this and don't worry about striking out a million times because you're going to hit 25 homers. Like that's I don't think players have fun that way. I just it's a way to make a living, but is that the way that you're going to have fun? I don't know. I mean, that's my personal take. Out of any, I can rationalize everything and see things from Neander's perspective, but that's just me. Like I love watching Simpson and Mangum. Give me all
Mhm.
those guys, and I'll go to war with those people.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Nobody wants to see Christopher Morel pulling off of a slider away and then popping up 5,000 times a season. And then just watch college baseball where there's bunting and stealing and the excitement when you watch those games. And obviously, people don't watch them as closely because I think, those guys don't go right to the pros. So it's tough. It's not like college basketball or football where it's a little different there. But you watch those games, guys putting the ball in play. They're hitting, running, they're bunting the small ball part of the game, like you're still going to be able to get home runs. Like guys are still going to run into these big swings. But the fact that, and again, kind of circling this whole thing around, if you're a team that can't hit, why not employ more guys like Chandler Simpson? I never understood that. I never
I
understood
don't
why the
know.
Rays were on the forefront and on the cutting edge of openers and shifts and all these different things to make sure that they're on the forefront of pitching and defense. How come they've never come up with like a different way to hit or a different way to hit and run or a different way to like slash or bunt or like do some crazy shit to like so that it's not three true outcomes, so that your guys that you have highly touted in the minor league system are just stuck in purgatory and they're either not performing at the big league level or not performing at the minor league level. I don't know. Well, we could talk about this all day. Evan
Yep.
Closky, 10 Tampa Bay, WTSP. Thank you, brother. I appreciate the time. We'll do this
I
again soon, man.
appreciate you.
Thank you,
Yep.
buddy.
Absolutely.
See you, man.